Hi, and welcome to System.debug. We're your hosts. I'm Megan Issa.
And I am Nate Pepper. S-Force be with you.
S-Force be with you.
Actually, I've got a surprise for you, Megan. I just sprung this on you.
Surprise! I love surprises.
Our viewers will find this out. You'll notice I'm not wearing my Astro shirt that I was on the way to my Verbo, but now I'm wearing a I Am Your Father shirt.
Oh my God, you remember when we met Luke Skywalker and we got interviewed?
I got interviewed. I didn't meet Skywalker, but yes, I remember when you met Skywalker. And I've got this oddly heavy Star Wars mug.
I hate when mugs are too heavy.
It may or may not be because I have to be in Star Wars.
Nate, you're skipping.
So we've got a Death Star dog bed. We've got a glass case of tchotchkes, complete with Han Solo and carbonite. There is a Star Wars sleeping bag, throw pillow.
I want to go there.
Oh my God, I know, right? This is like the other part of the house that you're not supposed to go to. Imperial personnel only. There is a AT-AT mini fridge. We have got the whole array of Star Wars mugs, lunchbox, and it just, and then some games. Dixit, Star Wars Episode 1 Galactic Chess. So may the S-Force be with you. Yep.
Yeah.
Although this was one of the kind of like, oh no.
What? How do you not do that?
Such a cruel joke. Like, is that just new this last year?
Oh.
Totally gonna jump in the balls. It looks kind of shallow though. I'm not gonna dive. I'm gonna dip in.
Yeah. So, maybe it's supposed to be like that you hot tub yourself in instead of diving.
But you've got the rebel over there
always. Yeah, she's my rebel.
Nice.
My self-proclaimed self-poster of Princess Leia. Yeah.
So, welcome, folks. Megan, what are we going to get into today?
Hey, we're talking about documentation for projects and what helps ARCs and devs and what helps your project as an ARC and developer in terms of documentation.
Can you hear Bart? It's pretty close to the Bart station. I think I could throw something and hit the rails.
Those are like magic headphones. They're blocking out all the noise. I love that I leaned in with you though.
Wait, the Bart noise. Wait, I should lean out. So yeah, that sounds like something that's been a pain point in at least one of my projects in the past. And I'm sure our viewers might.
And there's so many things to document that I think sometimes we end up just creating noise. And noise is great for busy work, but chances are if you're on a project, you have so much you actually need to get done that we should be focusing on requirements, on build, on design, on solution, rather than what can we make that are just pretty pictures.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. There's Nintendo Power over there. I just saw.
Oh
I had the first
issue. It sounds like the coolest house ever.
Oh my God, yes. See, I don't need my glasses all the time yet. So high level, like what are some of the kind of like big steps, like big categories of, there's the initial thing and then there's this part, whatever.
I would say you can't do any project without an ERD, a system landscape, and without your integration pattern documents.
What is this? So an ERD, entity relationship diagram?
Yeah. And that's your objects and how they're all connected.
Right. Yeah. And then a system landscape. That's actually the first time I've heard of that.
Yeah. So that's an architecture landscape diagram document. That's what are all your environments that you're connected to and how are they all related? Yeah.
Got it. And then what was the third one again?
Integration pattern documents. I would say this one's less of a diagram, but how are all your integrations set up? Are you using hub and spoke? Are you, calling out? Are they REST? Are they SOAP? What are they? What are you getting and how and why? and have it all spelled out, and know that for every integration, not just one, but all of them, and have it documented. I would say to go with that also before you build any integration, you got to call it all your mappings. What's going out and what's coming back. You can't build it unless you know what it is. And I also like to work hand in hand with VAs while they're working on requirements to get all the process maps done. You know, you can't always be in the weeds all the time. But if you don't understand those process maps, you're not going to be able to design a system.
Mm-hmm. So we've got like 3 biggies. It sounds like the integration or the integration architecture may not be necessary for some, or maybe even most, like smaller things. But so that's 2 documents. What are some other? So some other minor ones that I've seen are a data model, and usually by data model, it's more of a spreadsheet than a diagram, right? Like then like a Visio.
So you're thinking like your list of fields, their field descriptions,
right? Like, you know, worksheet or tab per object.
I usually build that out as I go, that configuration workbook. I don't like to start with it, because the worst thing you can do is assume you know where things are until you've built out your ERD. You don't want to build any fields until you have a story for the fields. Yeah.
Right. So I guess once you get that initial, like those high level things, then you can start going into the weeds, right?
So then I would say you map out your processes. You've got to have a process map to get to a story, because they help you define your stories.
And by process, do you mean like
user experience? Like what is the user doing, like end to end, like for that section? And usually that's done, at least in my experience, by the consultant or the BA on the project. Yeah, but not less by an architect, but one of my consultants and BAs, because we couldn't do projects without them. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they do so much of the work. Like we couldn't do anything without them.
Mm-hmm. So when you get like, this is the point where you're having requirements meetings, maybe drafting up some documents for the notes on meetings, etc. I can weigh in on this, but what's been your experience with taking notes during requirements meetings, getting them into another like main document, or possibly like when do you start creating stuff in something like Jira or Trello or project management system?
Yeah, so I would say you definitely want to, this is the one thing that's weird about Agile and Salesforce and implementation. So when do you actually get your project details? But you can't start a project without knowing your big picture. What's your end result? So you get requirements up front. And then from there, I think you can make out some general ideas about where you're going. But I think from there, you also start working on those process maps and diving deeper into each part of the story. But we do those a lot during the grooming sessions and as each sprint goes forward, because they're going to change. Just like your project's going to change and your day-to-day is going to change. You can't stick with those same stories you created at the beginning of the project, because, come sprint 4, those stories for sprint 4 are no longer valid. Like so many of them have morphed and you've got so many changes that it doesn't make sense to just keep building. You got to flex with the project. So I would build those out and start building up the stories, which you can, but also adapt your stories and clean up your stories and add detailed stories as you get those process maps. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What about you? What's your experience, Nate?
I mean, I've been involved in everything from, what do they call it? Agile fall, right?
Where Agile, it's like you write or Wagile. I heard Wagile the other day.
Wagile.
That was hilarious.
Wagile,
I'm like, are they like
Wagile the dog, right?
Yeah.
Like wag the dog.
Or dog.
Yeah, and sometimes it can feel like that. Is like the tail is wagging the dog. I've been on everything from sort of like waterfall Agile, but like more waterfall really, to fly by the seat of your pants. And I see the value in getting that high level of what we want, breaking it into sort of persona, like, yes, user stories. I think it's such a pain.
Personas are big for me, though. I actually, especially with communities, oh my gosh, personas are my life. I think I use them a lot less, and I made more general personas until I lived in the community sphere. Then I gotta know everybody. I'm like, who is this guy? Is he like my brother? Is he like the owner of a company? Do we want to get beers or do we want to get coffee? Like,
oh, you get
all about
foofy
it.
with it. I'm just like, I need to know everything in the world so I
What's
can
he
get the
gonna
permissions
touch?
right. And the audience is on pages.
Right. Yes. Is he? What is he touching? How is he logging in? What devices is he going to use? I actually have a little worksheet I fill out. Yeah.
Yeah. You're like what's his name? Noah. Remember in Donnie Darko, who played Noah Wiley, who's like, I think he has diabetes, and so I'm gonna have like little mints. Okay. I just need to teach this kid science or what.
I love it.
Oh yeah, but the like having, because those translate into files, sets, or you're gonna have partner admin users versus partner basic, or this and that, and like you need those groupings of, okay,
do they
this is
control
like
brand, or do they add users, or is it SSO?
Yeah, like platinum partner is going to see this when they log into the partner community.
Active Directory going to do the provisioning. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God. Last month.
You can't have users created by community users if ADs are running the show.
Right, and if it's a shop where very low number of users, low user turnaround, yeah, permission sets might be great for a project, especially when you only have permission 2 sets or 0 already.
I live by permission sets over profiles. My profiles are all shells.
I don't do admin work, so I love permission sets.
Right.
Right?
You gotta switch,
I don't do
man.
user
Plus, they're
provisioning.
so much easier to deploy.
Oh no, I always, so what I usually do, even if our things are going to go into profiles, I'll put them, usually a persona might encompass 3, 4, 10 profiles, who knows?
Right.
But if it's the same permissions for that, I will make a permission set for that, especially if I'm making scratch orgs, because I'm not going to pull down all the profiles and every object in class to do the project if I'm making a scratch org development. But then, then you can make a single permission set, keep that in a different path, like scratch only, and then use that for the scratch org, and then maybe push it to the production or sandboxes and prod org to have there if it's not going to be cruft, right? If it's not just going to be like, no, we don't need any more permission sets hanging around. Yeah. Well, so building, like, what do we do, while people are deving? Oh yeah, that's a big one, is make sure that you add any new fields, add them to the data model, add them to your permission sets, or at least your document. If you've got sometimes I'll have a sheet of what to, like, this profile is going to have access to these fields, right? Read, edit, none, whatever. But oftentimes I'll see it slips through the cracks, like, oh, I created a new 2 fields and I was so worried about the LWC, and creating the new field or something was a off, track thing, and I forgot to put it in the data model.
So what about as a developer? What documents help developers, Nate? What do you all create? What do you need for projects?
To be honest, as a developer, yeah, the biggest, something we didn't talk about that I have run into, besides a system landscape where you've got, all right, here's your sandbox to production path or multiple.
I would say my deployment path too. I do that in Sprint 0 every time as well. Yeah, that's another document. What's my org path?
I mean, not everybody uses scratch orgs to develop, and it's can sometimes be like, what sandbox do I develop on, right? And if it's not, and it's always this path, and it can be like, well, we spun up this, make sure to put it on the ticket, right, for the dev.
Yeah.
But I would say, besides what'd you call it, a ERD, right? Like, what objects relate to what,
right?
How the org hierarchy goes. I would say, as a developer, like the development path, right? Ticketing. What process do things go? How does stuff get handed off to QA? But as a developer, the documents that I find most helpful really are data model, system architecture, ERD. I thought I had an idea.
So we've got some actual feedback here, by the way, from our lovely watchers. Hi, Ryan. Love you. Thank you for coming. So we have Ryan saying that making docs is easy in the beginning, but it's that keeping them up to date that's hard. And dude, I got to agree with you. And not even in 3 years down the road, but throughout a project. You have to dedicate time to updating your documents. If you don't, there's just garbage in, garbage out. And if you're not keeping them up to date, and if you're not versioning the same document and you've got like versions 1 through 7 of the ERD in the same darn folder, that is useless. Absolutely useless to your team. Side note. So when you are when reading in here also, we have the design spec, the acceptance criteria, the DOR, and the DOD for the documents that Brian brings up. So we have what is the DOR? Brian, I'm sure will type that out, but do you know?
Directory of DOR?
Yeah, I don't know, DOR. DOD, that's the government, right? Yeah.
I think so.
Tell me more.
I'm not an acronym guy. I mean, to be honest, sometimes a data dictionary can be quite helpful because I'm not an acronym memorizer. I am a class and method memorizer, hopefully. Yeah, but I'll, especially when I get pulled onto a project, it's like, right, what's a WCS or a BAR? Like, I don't know. Data dictionaries are nice. But, okay, so.
Oh, definition of ready. Yes, and definition of done. Oh my gosh, if we don't have those stuff on from the get-go, there is no way to finish a project. Absolutely. That line has to be drawn in the sand right away, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I think we were still on like document land, but
yeah,
I will say before we jump to
documented too. Yeah.
Yes. Like done or done, right?
Right. And then what like kind of done, or like integration done, or like build done. Whoa, did the Millennium Falcon just land?
Yes, I figured, why am I showing you? I see, I started with that because I wanted to surprise you. So I figured we might as well just be in Star Wars land now. Yeah, but before we get into sort of, the project management process part, ooh, a lot of alliteration. What about document bloat? Like how to avoid document bloat? Because I will say, if you did do a meeting where there's going to be changes to a process for a ticket, that group, doc or some like non-living thing that's just for that, that's fine. But you can get into Google Drive soup real fast, and it's
and if you're going to be making new documents for stuff that's already done, you got to have an archive folder or just delete the document. It's got to be one of the two. You can't just let it hang out there,
because you just can't search for stuff easily when everything is SOW and
You've also got to make sure that you have somebody assigned for responsibility of every document. If you have 10 bajillion places where people are going to be tracking things, because there are so many different process flows, ERD, there's an ERD, there's system diagram, there's a config workbook. Well, if we update this field that uses this global pick list, every tab that's using that global pick list needs to be updated in a config workbook. Somebody's got to do it. It's got to be staying up to date throughout the whole darn project.
And don't just assume that the person who usually does more clicks than code or whatever PM than not is going to just do that. Yeah.
You can't. Yeah. It's got to be called out, and there needs to be an owner, and that should be written on the document somewhere. It should. And just like for deployments, like my deployment docs, I'll call out what the SLA is for turnaround for either code review or the deployment itself, so that we also know how long somebody has to get back to you with what your fixes are and how long you have to get back. Or if it's going to take you longer, then you've got to call it out. Yeah.
All right. Project management process. Definition of ready. Definition of ready is huge, because if you don't have a definition of ready, you don't know what's like ready or not. I mean, you still
Well,
need,
I could guess what this is for ready. Does that mean it's ready? Like if I have an idea for a solution. But I love
like,
that I just waved bye to the chat. Bye. I'll miss you. Bye, Ryan.
Oh, bye, Ryan.
But that doesn't mean I have input from the business. I still need feedback, and I can't build without it.
Because just you had an initial meeting and they said, we want to do this. And they, take the whole half hour, kind of telling you everything that they had thought of how to do it. You take that, you digest it, and then you have questions or you want to run things by them. Super important.
No, things just may not fit. If you are adding to a build and you got like a change order coming in, it just may not fit. Is it MVP? The ultimate question that should be asked about every ticket in the first release. Is this truly MVP? And if you're not asking that about every ticket, and it is R1, you're not starting in a good spot. And everyone should know to ask that question too. And when you look at your diagrams, when you look at your config workbook, everything should make sense and make it so that your project comes together, but it shouldn't be too overwhelming where you're building out areas that you may or may not know if they'll be used or used properly. Yeah, right. Which is why you stick to MVP.
One of the biggies I find also in build, so to finish up the whole definition of ready is so important. Like ready to build or groomed, or there's a lot of terms for kind of that. You've identified a need, but then the need is well detailed enough for somebody to start building it. And then the definition of done. What are some of the things that you've experienced? Like what happens when the definition of done is not defined, and then bad things go, like what are the bad things that happen and go wrong?
So I have seen projects get morphed and requirements continue to grow out exponentially. Mm-hmm. I have seen what it is that we're actually building change over and over. And I've seen it so that, support lasts well beyond a project and well beyond the 2 weeks of like post go live support, because you never got to figure out what something was when it was done. So new things just kept getting added in.
Which is not the desirable sales situation that one might want it to be. Like it's so painful for both sides sometimes. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it can be, if the relationship is good and that can be between departments as well as consulting companies. But if it's like, we realized we didn't know everything that we wanted to do, or you're doing great and we just want enhancements or little tweaks, that can be fine. But sometimes it can be a case of, like you didn't, this was done and like it, it should have gone through like QA, code review, acceptance, client acceptance, stakeholder acceptance can be in the same company.
So one of the other documents you should always check for to see if your client has are, what are the standards? Is there naming convention? Those, your design standards and naming convention documents and your coding standards. See if you can get those off the bat from the customer for what they require for their org. It's going to save you a lot of heartache at the end when you go through that final technical review.
Okay, I'm going to jump. One of my favorite times is DevOps, deployment, assembly lines of code goodness.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You want to take the start?
Why don't you just change that naming convention? I no longer want to say those letters, have us say totally different set of letters. We changed our whole naming convention in the middle of the project. Forgot to tell you. Change it. Ooh. You can do a script to change it all. Oh, it's like magic. It'll change like 95% of it properly. It still work.
Of what, like?
All your prefixes for your naming conventions?
Yeah.
Play to that one.
Well, hopefully it hasn't made it to prod. That would be nice.
Hopefully.
It hasn't made it to prod yet. That's really nice on those initial projects. Yeah.
When label those Stonematch API names, it's like nails on a chalkboard for me, folks. Like,
Well, and to be honest, I will say I'm in a project where, you can like, oh wait, we don't need that field. We don't need those like 10 fields, or we want to change this label. And sometimes it's even, what is it? An LWC initially was just for one use case, but then like, hey, we could reuse this for 3 or 4 things. And so you don't want it like specific name LWC thing.
Yeah.
And so if you catch it before prod, you can do that.
So, and I don't recommend naming after a project. I recommend keeping it a consistent org name, because those project named items, you're going to use them in multiple places and it's not going to fit right.
Well, and sometimes you can have an initiative 3-4 years ago.
Exactly.
Maybe it's done in-house, but it's different people still in-house. Maybe it's done by one consulting company and then somebody comes and augments it, or you have somebody start an in-house thing and then you have a partner, SI partner, come in and do it better or differently. Right. And then you have the same prefix. It's like, well, which ones are, like, how do we group these, right? Is it really an augmentation of the same thing? Am I going to deprecate these like 20 classes or Visualforce pages in the old community? Like, and
exactly.
Especially if you're, if you're paying another company to do this for you, it's not very important to clean up, but it can become bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. Wow, and we're at the 30-minute mark. Wow, we talked about like documents and naming this whole time. This was fun. Anything for the last 2 minutes?
Gosh, I would just say, make sure you're running your tests. Make sure you've got your like ingredient list, whether it's going to be a change set or a package XML or whatever. Make sure you've got your ingredient list ready of what to deploy. Make sure you run tests and you get your coverage up there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. We'll have a special guest. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us all. And I am Nate Pepper, S-Force be with you.
I'm Megan Brodkey, Megan SF, MEIGHAN SF. And follow us on the Twitter, so make sure to like and subscribe. The little buttons below. Peace.
Cheers. Bye, guys.